Paul didn't ask his older brother where his niece had been. He asked only how her injury was healing, if the surgery had been successful, if Haman thought his daughter would need to continue physical therapy in California, and if so, could Haman drive to their sister Tikai's house in Bigan, where Paul had left some of the old equipment from his old clinics in Dagupan. Most of the drugs would be expired or obsolete, but Paul would make do. By the time of the phone call, Paul had been retired in California for over 5 years, but everyone knew doctors and nurses rarely retired. The vocation was eternal. Haman had no answers to Paul's questions. He replied only, with some composure, that according to their younger sister, Soli, Hero was physically intact. That was the phrasing Haman used, in English, even though they were speaking in Ilocano. Non compos mentis? Paul asked, more to himself than to his brother. Anya? Haman asked, irritated. Paul reverted back to Ilocano, said he hadn't said anything, that the line was bad. Haman didn't reply for a long time. Finally, Paul said the same things he'd already said in his letter. Have Soli send her on the tourist visa. She'll stay in the extra room. She can help take care of Ronnie, or Paz will try to find her a job in one of the hospitals. On the phone, neither Paul nor Haman called her Hero. Nobody did. Everyone still called her Nimang. It was a few months later, in the summer of 1990, when Hero walked through the garage door of that house in Milpitas and was met by a young girl with raw, leather-like scars covering half of her face, her entire neck, and down both of her forearms. That she learned you could make more than one nickname out of the name Hieronima, a name that the De Vera family had been recycling for at least 3 generations. It was this young girl who declared, rashy hand on her hip, "So we have the same name. But I go by Ronnie, spelled R-O-N-I. I'll call you Auntie Hero." That was perhaps only the second or third time Hero had ever heard an American voice in real life. The first time she'd ever heard an American voice coming out of the face of someone who looked not unlike her own father. Behind Hero, Paz came through the door, carrying Hero's green suitcase, hefting its weight against her substantial hip until she could settle it on the ground next to the pile of worn-out chanelas. She was several inches shorter than Hero, not over 5 feet tall. But Hero felt immediately shadowed, rebuked somehow by that tense, proud stance. A woman Hero would later come to know as Paz's sister Gloria emerged from the living room, followed by 2 young men Hero would later come to know as Paz's nephews, Jehomar and Freddy. They spoke to Paz in Pangasinan. Hero didn't understand anything they said. "Mangan kila," Paz was saying, pointing to plates of food covered with paper towels on the kitchen table. They were shaking their heads, smiling shyly at Hero, and heading for the garage door. Hero realized they must have been watching the girl while Paz and Paul went to the airport to meet her. Paz was picking up the suitcase again, getting ready to take it up the stairs to show Hero her new room. There were many things Hero should have done then. She should have said, "Sorry, Tita Paz, let me take that," even though she wouldn't have been able to carry the suitcase herself. Even before that, driving through the town, she shouldn't have minutely wrinkled her nose at the smell, which she would come to know later as the famed shit smell of Milpitas, the reason why house prices were lower there. She should have made casual conversation on the drive from San Francisco International Airport to Milpitas, instead of remaining mute and clammy in the back seat. She should have mustered up the strength at least to stay awake as Paul drove in silence down the highway that Hero would later know as intimately as the vein down the inside of her own wrist, instead of creakily turning her head to its side and treading lead-limped between buoys of sleep, only fully lucid for the last 15 minutes of the drive. Hero saw the sign for Calaveras Boulevard, Milpitas, above them, saw a large, lone Holiday Inn on her right side.